From Carolla One Studios in Glendale, California, this is The Adam Carolla Show. Adam's guest today, D.L. Hughley. With Gina on news, Bald Brian on sound effects, and Dave Damashek is back for good sports. And now, he doesn't like blackface, but he does love a brown nose. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice. We've got a mandate. You get it on. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for telling a friend. We love that about you, right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
Hey, I'm Bald Brian.
YOLO, man.
YOLO, now more than ever. Well, I'll finally get to ask a DL whether his last name is Hughley or Hughley.
Long debated amongst the halls of the Adam Carolla Show.
You know, Mike might have something here because he was there at the very beginning with the DL in the early 90s. And so he may have some insight. All right, so
I feel like the president would say hugely.
Hugely. DL Bigley.
Hugely.
So I have a couple.
DL Bigley.
I have a couple thoughts. One is we did a sort of real-time COVID breakdown situation with Drew, who left the building moments ago, and we'll just grab it and slot that in a few minutes so you guys can get a little update as far as what Drew knows about it. Right. Also, I had some other bigger thoughts. One is I was listening to, I don't know, a radio show, and somebody had come across the real sort of story behind Uncle Ben and his converted rice. And the real story with Uncle Ben, and, I think we all just feel like, you remember that picture in your head? There's this sort of stately black gentleman. I had in my head serving up food. He felt like a servant to me or something, and it felt racist enough. And then when someone said it was racist, that was good enough for me. And I think we're all kind of just there in our minds that anything somebody did in the 40s or 50s, it just sort of, here's the math. If you did something in the 40s or 50s or before that involved a black person on the jacket of your book or the cover of your box or the maple syrup, whatever, it was all bad. So we just kind of go, yeah, it was all bad. But the thing that I did not know is that this rice, this sort of technology of this parboiled rice, this partially boiled rice or whatever, they're converted par. By the way, if you talk to Vinny, I think he'll tell you that the index is much better on a parboiled converted rice than it is on just fresh rice you would make at home. Anyway, Uncle Ben was an African-American rice grower known for the quality of his rice. And a white guy, German-British scientist, Eric Hunsenlob, and a British scientist, Francis Haran Rogers, they went and they did this technology, the science behind the parboiled, whatever it was in 1940. And they then needed a trusted spokesperson here in the United States to sell their product. Sure. So this is actually a good story because there's a couple like German guys and an English guy, and they wanted a good American spokesperson for their product. So Uncle Ben is where they went to because this guy was known for having a high quality rice. And then they put Uncle Ben on the cover. So I would argue that that's a pretty good argument for at least those two guys not being racist in, circa 1940.
Now I don't want them to destroy Uncle Ben's legacy.
Right.
For that era, that's pretty progressive. They could have chosen any farmer or any whatever. Like they chose a black guy, which for the 1940s is probably pretty progressive.
And what's up with the uncles and the aunts? The Uncle Bens and the Aunt Jemimas?
That part's racist.
Is that the part that people that feels weird?
I don't know.
He was probably someone's uncle.
You put uncle, you put a black guy. Now we're down into, again, we're tearing down statues of guys who are fighting against the South in the Civil War. We're just tear down. We're sort of frenzy. I always call it shark feeding frenzy mode. Like if you see sharks and they're in like a crazy feeding frenzy, then they start biting.
Just roll back.
They bite each other. They start biting each other and even themselves. Like they just can't. They're in that once they're agitated, and we're just take it all down. But anyway.
We got to save Uncle Ben.
Chose the name Uncle Ben's as a means to expand marketing experts. Are we talking about 1940 here, Max Zapata?
Marketing efforts. And yeah, it was founded in 1943.
1943. All right. So World War II was going on, and there you go.
Yeah, a lot of this rice was supplied to the armed forces in World War II.
Well, again, if I'm a descendant of that guy, and I had a grandpa or great grandpa that was a great rice grower and known for his quality product, and this German guy and this English guy wanted to use him to help sell their quality product, I would not feel good about his face or likeness being removed from the box.
Also, you have to imagine that he signed on willingly and got paid. If he got screwed out of some money, that's a different thing. But you have to imagine the guy got paid or his family did. So, what's the issue?
To that end, the first thing that comes up is an article from the New York Times that I believe is from the New York Times. The headline is Uncle Ben Board Chairman.
Oh, yeah, that was in 2007. They had a marketing campaign where they promoted him chairman of the board.
Oh, never mind. That's like Frank Sinatra.
Right. Well, anyway, either way, they don't have to all come down, people. And I just thought
we got to save Uncle Ben.
Be nice to know the origin story of Uncle Ben. All right, Tempe, the show in Tempe is canceled, as you hear this, or rescheduled.
Postponed.
Sorry, postponed, rescheduled. All right, so don't return those tickets yet. We're going to pick a new date. And we will we'll tell you when that is. And no, it is not that date.
And those tickets are still good.
Yeah, the tickets will still be good for the new date that we decide on very shortly. So don't return those tickets. Just hang on to them, and we'll give you a stat like just the next day or two. We'll give you the new date. All right. So I was thinking about that, and I was talking to Dr. Drew. Today's the day Dr. Drew comes in and we do our podcast. And I had this interesting discussion with him, and one I'd like some feedback on from you guys as well, which is, so here was the gist of the conversation. So he was talking about Tempe and going to Tempe. This is right before they pulled the plug on it and rescheduled. And I said, yeah, and I told him the story about talking to my sister and how she couldn't believe I didn't have any thoughts about going to Tempe, and I told her I didn't have any thoughts. And then I realized this, which is, and we talked about this a little bit, we didn't really drill down on it, which is, as a human being, you have to be able to look at yourself as an individual and as a statistic, not at the same time. You have to toggle back and forth between being a statistic and being an individual. So when Adam Carolla is taking a flight to Tempe to do a show, I am a statistic. When I get to Tempe and I get up on stage, I'm an individual. I'm now me, the comedian. And then when I take an Uber back to the hotel, I become a statistic again. So you can go, I'm scared that Uber driver's going to take me to the desert and kill me. No, that's Adam the individual. The statistic, you got to become Adam the statistic. And we all have to toggle back and forth and know when to. So when you're a parent and when you're a neighbor or when you're a husband or a wife, you are an individual. When you're flying commercially, you now go back to statistic. When a cop pulls you over, he is not pulling the individual over. He's pulling the statistic over. He's pulling your Honda over. He's not pulling you over. He's pulling a car over with you piloting that car. And there's a big problem when we're not able to define when we're a statistic and when we're an individual. So my sister was thinking as an individual. What are you doing getting on an airplane? I was thinking statistically, I've flown a lot. I'm not in a danger, and I'm not in a threatened group or anything. And I said, no, I was thinking so you have to go through your whole life toggling back and forth. Yep. And what we're doing and what you're seeing right now is too many people hanging out in the individual lane for far too long. So a lot of what you're seeing, a lot of the chaos, a lot of people sort of screaming at politicians, what are you going to do for me? You know what I mean? I'm a mother of 3. You know, like, okay, that's your lower my taxes or do my, you know, that's you spending way too much time in individual lane and not statistic lanes. Commercial airlines, hotels, politicians, you are a statistic to them. The cop pulling you over, you know, you are a statistic to that cop. Once you get out of that car and start wrestling with that cop, now you're an individual.
Yep.
And you need to calibrate. You need, and so what I'm asking everyone to do is, you don't want to be a statistical dad. You want to be an individual dad. And you don't want to be artistically, you don't want to be a statistic. You want to go out and hang your shingle, create your product, find your voice, do your thing. When you're up on stage or you're writing that book or whatever it is you're doing, that should be as purely individual, as purely you as you can. But the second you drop that, and somebody just goes, hey, you got to put a mask on before you come into the Whole Foods, you go right back to statistic. You're right back to statistic because that's what the problems. I'm not wearing them. I don't wear them. I don't have. It all starts with I. So these people that have trouble putting a mask on or they're scared to go to the airport or whatever it is, they're not thinking statistically. And I'll also bet that it affects their kind of individual thinking as well, that they're probably not the mom or the wife or the husband or the whomever that they could be, but have those 2 distinct modes and then constantly calibrate as to what mode you should be in. When you're pulling in to a Costco and you got your blinker on and someone slides into the spot you were waiting for, be in statistic mode. That's not individual mode, gets you out of the car and sometimes punched or shot. That's what I'm saying. So have those 2 modes and know how to navigate them. And as I realize, it's obviously an uphill battle now because of Facebook and Twitter and selfies, and everyone is in 100% me mode all the time. I think you're seeing this slight erosion of our society because we're having trouble toggling back and forth. Thoughts?
You're talking, Gina, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. You're talking, it's so funny you mentioned write a book as one of your examples, because in my New York Times bestselling book, Shrinkage, the thing that people always bring up to me the most to this day is that I think I titled a chapter, Be Your Own Statistic, because when I was faced with the diagnosis, right, the first thing I did was go home and Google it and look at the stats, and they were horrifying. Like it was a dismal survival rate. And I realized that included old people, sick people, people in other countries, people who don't have access to care, people who don't want access to care. And I realized that, I'm in my own category as a statistic. There are statistics. I have to acknowledge them. It's going to be a long battle, but you have to be, like you said, calibrated, but also acknowledge that both exist. You can look at yourself as an individual, but also recognize that there are statistics and they apply to you. How do they apply to you and how don't they apply to you?
Gina?
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about, we talk about all roads leading to narcissism and with the selfies and, you don't have to be an author now. You don't have to be a best-selling author. You could just post on Facebook and now you're a blogger and all these things. And the first thing that came to mind when you said that is I was going through a shoebox of when I lived in Greece a million years ago. This is, a long time ago for a summer program. And all of the pictures are these sweeping landscapes and cliffs and ocean and beautiful stuff. And guess what's not in it? Me. Because at the time, before cell phones and before all this stuff, I thought, well, why do I want to get in the way of the image? The image isn't about me. I want to come back and I want to show my family the cliffs and I want to show my family the sea. It's like, get out of the way. I'm trying to see the picture. And now can you imagine not, showing your family a picture without you and your little sun hat doing a pose in front of it? I mean, it's just a different world.
Yeah. The notion, I also try to think of like, how does it manifest itself? Like think about what percentage of Americans have tattoos in 2020 versus in 2000, and especially 1980. I've been around long enough where tattoos were for merchant marines and the occasional stripper, but not everyone had tattoos. And I was talking to Drew the other day about tattoos, and I can't remember if I brought it up here or not, but I was like, it doesn't interest me because everyone has a tattoo now. So what is the story of you and your tattoo? But the fact that it's gone up, in orders of magnitude over the last 20 years suggests that that's how we're wired. Everyone is going into individual mode. And I think a tattoo is sort of a byproduct of you attempting to sort of contend with or represent your individuality. Now, to me, it's about accomplishments, not about ink that you put on your inner thigh. But for others, somehow that buys them something. But it also means you spent that time and you spent that money not writing that New York Times bestseller book. And I just worry, all I'm saying to anyone listening is every day, have a constant calibration system or session with yourself where you're kind of going in between individual and the public and the group and the statistic. And even when you're on, like you're on an airplane and the flight attendant's getting snarky with you and telling you're still a statistic. You're not an individual. Even when they're face to face with you, they're really about the statistic and not the individual. And then you get to kind of move forward with your life, deciding when do I really need to concentrate on being my best individual version of myself, and when do I get to just stand in line, take my belt and shoes off, go through the metal detector, occasionally get pulled out for enhanced screening, which has nothing to do with you. Again, it's random. You just happen to fall in line. That's where we're at. So just sort of give that some thought. And the real key is don't be in individual mode all the time or even half the time, and know when to easily toggle back into statistic mode. All right. Let's see. I got questions up here. Paul's from Chicago's got the worst day ever.
Ooh.
Hey, Paul, 35, Chicago. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Adam, what's up?
What's going on?
I was listening to Carolla Classics the other day, and you did a bit about your worst day ever, but not something overt like, wife dying or whatever, and your motorcycle got stolen, and you had to walk to get it. And I thought that's a really good bit, and I had an idea for a mundane worst day ever.
Well, I don't know. Does everyone kind of have that in their head? It can't be the day your grandfather died or whatever that is.
So you said that on Carolla Classics, so I have that in my head, but I don't think that people think that way.
Well, the reason one of the reasons it was a worst day ever is because it wasn't my motorcycle that was stolen. It was my buddy Chris's motorcycle that was impounded. And it was impounded because I got a job for like $8 an hour painting interior offices, commercial office buildings in Century City. And Century City, the parking was like $32. And there's no place to park. And so I pulled in, I had my motorcycle. I wasn't going to pull a ticket because I was going to make $60 for the entire day. And we're going to work like a 10-hour day, work from 7 to 5 or something like that. And so I took the bike and just parked it alongside like a big concrete retaining wall next to the parking structure. And of course, after painting with Andy, the Jehovah's Witness, for 10 hours, I walked down at 5:30 and the bike was gone. And it wasn't my bike. It was Chris's bike. And that's all that, obviously I wasn't flush with transportation or I wouldn't have borrowed his bike. And then all I did was start walking around Century City Mall trying to figure out if the bike was stolen or it was impounded. And I came up to the security guy and I was like, hey man, I had a motorcycle that was parked next to a big cement wall. And did you? He's like, yeah, I had that towed. And I was like, oh, why? And he goes, fire hazard. And I said, it was parked next to a huge concrete wall. Yeah, I know.
Cement catches on fire.
Rules are rules. And I said, so I'm in Century City and I'm living in a garage in North Hollywood. And now I'm praying it got towed toward my house. And I said,
silver lining.
Where's the impound lot? And he's like, Santa Monica.
Oh my God.
which is further out.
Wrong direction.
Opposite direction.
I was like, no cell phone, no cash, no credit card, no wallet, no nothing. I literally just started walking toward North Hollywood. It's about 20 miles. And I was just hitchhiking. Gay guy picked me up on Santa Monica, got me as far as Laurel Canyon. Started hitchhiking up Laurel Canyon. A friend of mine from high school named Stacy was driving up, picked me up. By the time I got home, it was 9 o'clock at night. But the problem is the bike was still at the impound yard. I didn't have any money. It was in Santa Monica. And I was supposed to be back at work at 7 the next morning. So I got Chris. I borrowed $80. Chris took my dad's car or something, drove me to Santa Monica. Then I had to ride the motorcycle home at night from Santa Monica. It sucks so bad being poor. It's so bad being poor because if I had money, it would have never happened. I would have never done the shitty job, but I also would have never. What happens when you're poor is you go, I can't afford this parking, so I'm going to park over here, and then you get towed. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
No. I think George Takei was the guest and was heaping praise on a 20-year-old Adam Carolla for that story. But the idea
was he the guy that picked you up in Santa Monica?
No, but that's when I learned gay code because he was driving me in like a Eldorado, like 73 Eldo convertible with the white leather interior and stuff. And as we were getting toward Laurel Canyon, like Santa Monica goes down, Boys Town goes down like 4 or 5 miles and and like at some point he's like, hey, my apartment's right around here. You want to get high? And I realized, want to get high is kind of, I think it's gay code for go up. Can't go, hey, you want me to suck your dick? They just go, you want to get high? And that next thing you know, you're in this person's apartment getting high, and then who knows? Right. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was a Marine from 2004 to 2008, and I was 2 weeks out of Iraq, and my mom was in a really horrible accident, and she was in a coma. And I arrived, and I was dealing with family that I don't talk to a lot. And they were upset with me that I wasn't affecting as much sort of distress I think that they thought was appropriate. But it was obviously a difficult time. But that's not the bad part. The bad part is I'm going through all of this stuff that had sort of just recently happened, and I take really simple pleasures in very mundane things like a mindfulness kind of thing. So I go past the vending
You
machine
Marines, you're all the same.
All zen and
Namaste, we get it.
Yeah, with your little Zen gardens and your miniature rakes. Sorry.
I think it was protective.
Yeah.
But no, I see a pomegranate Snapple in a vending machine, and I thought, I'm gonna. That sounds fantastic, and I'm gonna get that. And I took $1 in my pocket, put it in the machine, and I got it, cracked it open, took a sip, and I thought, I'm just gonna embody this moment and not care about anything else. And it was a goddamn diet Snapple, and it tasted awful.
I feel your pain,
and in that
Ryan.
moment, and that was literally, of all the things I've experienced, even to this day, that was one of my lowest moments because I go, God damn, I can't even enjoy this moment. And I threw the goddamn thing in the garbage, and that was, to this day at least, the worst day of my life.
Paul, do you have many?
I love Paul.
Do you have many black friends? Because I encourage you to share this story with many. When
Did you lose any comrades in the 4 years over there?
I can top you. Do you guys like Snapple?
Yeah. All right. Your nephew was shot, never saw his 11th birthday. But let me tell you something. Snapple, great. Died Snapple? Nah, it's so good.
You don't know pain. You don't know pain.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Paul. I would encourage, I do want to know if others, we don't have to do it now, but I'll put it out there. Just your kind of worst day. I used to have a lot of them. That one lasted, I got up at, we would work 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. And so that was Monday, and that's North Hollywood. That's getting up at 6 a.m., and that's getting on that bike by, 6:15, 6:20 to get to Century City, by 7 to start. And by the time I pulled, I left about 6:15. By the time I pulled back in on the bike, it was almost 11 at night at that point. And the money that I had earned in that day, I was completely shot plus $20
spoken for. Yeah.
Ugh.
Can I tell you really quickly, a very quick one that came to mind? This is one of those contenders from, a little like Paul, but I was broke when I moved here, flat broke, and it only got worse. Compounding credit cards, unsolved issues from when I lived in New York, and it was just getting worse and worse. I was starting to get collections letters that I didn't know before then came in a different colored envelope. So getting these red envelopes, lived in that shitty studio in Echo Park with the gang members and the roosters and all the chickens. I had to move out of the way. The cat that had kittens in front of my door, and there was no end in sight to any of this. So there was a collections agency after me. I was very scared. I had lots of credit card bills. I had no money. I was working these shit jobs, and I called a friend of mine to just sort of like see, like, just to put out the feelers, like, you think I could borrow some money? And that wasn't going very well. So I'm talking to her. I have no gas. So I pull into a gas station and I have a $20 bill, which is literally my last $20 bill. I go in while I'm on the phone with her. I'm kind of like having a hard time keeping it together. I give the 20 and I say, 20 on pump 8, please. Thank you. And I'm talking to her. I like stop for a few minutes, finish the conversation, get off the phone, go to my car and realize, oh, that's not pump 8. I'm on pump 6. Okay, because it wasn't working. I go back in. I go, hi, I gave you a 20 and I just need to get my gas. I accidentally gave you the wrong pump number. And she's like, oh, somebody already pumped that gas and left.
Wow.
Like, what? No, I don't have anything left. I don't have anything left. And she's like, I'm sorry, somebody pumped it. I don't know who, but that gas has been spoken for. And I sat on the curb at the gas at the Arco and cried.
One time I went
an Arco makes it worse.
It does, doesn't it? That friend that I was going to beg for money drove out to give me $5 to put in my car. It's just one of those shitty situations.
We'll keep this going. We'll give more time to people here to figure it out. Eddie, 30, Los Angeles.
Hey, Adam.
Hi, Guy.
Hey. I've been listening to you for over 20 years now. And I've heard all the crappy stories about your parents, but I've always wondered, which one do you like more?
My dad. 1,000%. My mom's horrible.
Quick. All
Think
right.
about it.
Yeah. I just had another horrible exchange with her yesterday. I won't get into it today, but we'll make a note for tomorrow. But it's horrible. She's horrible.
But heart to heart, because you've been having heart to hearts lately with your dad. Pre-heart to heart.
I did. Even then, my dad's intellectually interesting, at least, even if he's a bad dad. My mom's just, she's just, the conversation I had with her yesterday made me want to throw up in my mouth. So I'll tell you tomorrow, but it's so sad. I'll get into that tomorrow. I don't want to bore you guys.
Taking it to the grave.
I'll bore you guys with that shit tomorrow.
Give me the news with Grad. News with Gina Grad. Breaking viral, all those crazy Trump tweets. Give me news with Gina Grad. Trouble in the Middle East. Celebrity drunk meltdowns. Deep news with Gina Grad. The news with Gina Grad.
As we record this is breaking. Carl Reiner, prolific comedian, actor, director, and producer, has died. He was 98 years old. He's best remembered for his work creating The Dick Van Dyke Show, and younger audiences may remember him as Saul Bloom in Ocean's 11. He was born March 20th, 1992 in the Bronx. So anybody born March 20th, that's a good start to your dinner party. Father of Rob Reiner, partnered with Mel Brooks in a long-running comedy routine, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, and they stayed dear friends forever and ever. Reiner continued writing and producing, acting, and comedy films for his whole career. From Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. I don't know if you remember that movie. It's one of my dad's favorite movies. I've seen it 1,000 times. Yep, 1982. To Ocean's 13, that was in 2007. Reiner leaves behind sons Rob and Lucas and daughter Sylvia Ann, all actors, comedians, and artists.
How come we don't know Lucas, or do we?
I don't know. I'm going to look him up.
Yeah. Well, old school, sort of interesting that, that's the last of that generation, those guys and the Mel Brooks eyes of the world and all that stuff. He's a famous painter.
Painter and photographer.
Huh. Oh, wait a minute. How famous can he be? He stumped all 5 of us. But
in that circle.
yeah, I wasn't the kind of, I think those guys had a thing that maybe we're missing now in comedy and in general, which is they were affable. Like they seem super affable. You know what I mean? Like, I like that guy. Seems like a good guy. You know what I mean? Now everyone's like edgy and pushing the envelope, or they're doing whatever they're doing, but they're not affable. Used to be something and just being an affable guy.
Yeah, and endearing. I remember seeing him do an interview at one of the Turner Classic Movie Film Festivals, and he was wearing a Colorado Rockies baseball hat. And he was asked, like, "Oh, are you a big Colorado Rockies fan?" And he took it off and he looked at it. He goes, "Oh, is that what that is? It says CR. I thought it was Carl Reiner. I don't know." Stuff like that. It's just so endearing.
The Carl Reiner's cocktail party.
Oh.
No.
Spike Lee. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one. Barron Trump.
Wow.
Just a
Stories abound.
Stop there.
Barron's probably got 3 inches and 30 pounds on spikes in case it goes down. I don't know.
3 inches? Barron's a giant.
Is he?
Yeah, show some recent pictures of him, Chris. He's like, I wouldn't say he's towering over Melania, but he's a big boy.
I haven't even seen him, and I don't think I've seen him since the whole Kathy Griffin thing.
He's lanky.
Okay. All right, so Spike Lee, this is the cocktail party game with Carl Reiner. Spike Lee, Barron Trump, Fred Rogers, Chester Bennington, Michael Rappaport. Oh, my God. If we could get Barron Trump and Michael Rappaport in the same... I don't know, Shaq. We may have a new
back
leader.
to the Knicks.
Yeah.
Patrick Ewing, though.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Big
He's
guy.
6'5".
He's bigger than Trump. I mean, the Donald
Christ.
Trump.
Jesus. I've not seen him.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when the last time you see the guy's 13 or 12 or whatever.
He had a growth spurt.
It's a 13-year-old small forward.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
I am loving this dinner party.
Yeah, that's a good
Can
one.
they stream this, please?
Yeah. Wait, is Chester from Lincoln Park?
Yeah.
Lincoln Park.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good party. It's a good party.
That's awesome. And Fred Rogers?
Yeah, it's a good party.
Balance it all out.
He would keep the peace between
Of course.
Spike and Barron.
Spike and Barron.
When things got a little heated, he'd sing, "It's you I like, every part of you." So moving on to more Trump news, which we haven't gotten into. Senate Republicans pressed the White House on Monday for answers about the report of Russia offering bounties to Taliban militants to kill U.S. troops, and wondered whether retaliation against Russia might be necessary. So Donald Trump continues to claim that he was never briefed on this situation, which has led to even more questions. And Senator Ben Sasse, who I believe we spoke to on this show, of Nebraska, said, quote, "I want to understand how it's conceivably possible that the president didn't know. How does that possibly happen? Number two, what is their plan to make sure that our enemies know that if you target American servicemen and women, the consequences are going to be draconian?"
How does
Draconian.
How does it work where they get the Taliban to target American soldiers? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
That's the story
pay a bounty per.
Yeah, I don't know what
But
the
aren't they-
structure of the deal was.
Weren't they trying? Isn't everyone trying to kill each other anyway?
Yes.
Well, it's allied forces and a lot of contract killing mercenaries over there. So I think they're offering a bounty for American enlisted military.
Yeah.
And the latest update from the New York Times is reporting Donald Trump did receive a written briefing on the matter in late February. So
His plausible deniability is that he didn't read it, and so he may never have known. But that's like plausible deniability.
Yeah, like he didn't have the volume up on his tweet or something like that.
Right.
Like just I didn't know what was going
white
on.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be
So,
fair,
that's-
in the whole white power thing, forget about Trump. The guy got kind of thrown under the bus. The old guy who did the white power chant in
Yeah?
that. Yes.
Well, there was like a call in.
Undeservedly so.
yeah. No, he did because they cut the front of it off.
What was the front of it?
The front of it was a guy yelling, "Oh, where's your robe?" or "Where's your hood? Where's your hood?" And he went like, "Oh, white power, white power." He was like mocking the guy for asking him where his hood was.
Oh, okay.
So
he's
the
provoked
news, depending on which news you watch, they'll either leave it on or clip it off.
And depending on who, for the same reason, the guy said back to him, "Yeah, white power." who was being like sarcastic, but it looked like they were buddies all of a sudden. White power. Yeah, white power.
Maybe they knew each other.
I don't know, but there's a kind of a context for it. So if you watch the news, it looks like he's just going in a circle going white power, white power. He was going by a guy and they were calling him a racist. So if, let's just say I was in a golf cart and I was going somewhere and there's a group of people and I go, wait, you're racist, you're racist. Where's your hood? Where's your robe? And I went, white power, like I was mocking him as I left my robe at home. That doesn't excuse Trump. It excuses the old guy in the golf cart.
That's a good point.
You talk about the right response, and I don't know this guy. I don't know if he's a racist. I could care less. But like, if someone asked you, "Do you kill your wife?" The answer isn't, "Well, I'd like to wait for my attorney to get here and we can discuss." The answer is, "Fuck no! No, of course no! I'd never kill my wife. I love her." The answer to you're a racist isn't white power. The answer is, "Fuck off! I'm not a racist. Fuck you." Yeah,
no, I know, but he was mocking the guy. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. If somebody said, it's like somebody said, you're gay. And I was like, yeah, where are the boys? You know, it was that kind of a mock to him. Like he was,
If only someone on this show had any experience with taking things out of context and using them against people. I don't know.
Who's that? Me?
Ryan made a career of it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the drops out.
Yeah, the drops.
I'm like, I don't feel like I do that to people.
There's a little understanding there.
We have
Dawson,
you have the whole thing or something. But anyway, if you take it right from white power, it seems like he's just going around doing that. Look, here's what I'm saying. Try to prevent yourself from yelling white power in a parking lot on a golf course, but the context was he was making fun of the guy who was telling him he forgot his Klan hood. Sorry, go ahead.
Where's your white ass?
Yeah, you got it, you. White power. There you go, white power. Do you hear that?
You hear that? But he was yelling, where's your robe or where's your hood? That's why.
I eat ass.
There you go.
That's got to be an uncomfortable retirement community because that was at a place called the Villages, and these people got to coexist.
Yeah, they live in the same few mile radius.
Are they all in the same? Oh,
I think it's at a place called the Villages.
Jesus Christ. I've never seen so much. Well, first off, I would put this on my advertisement for this retirement community because these guys were fucking spry. That was like the movie Cocoon for racists. You know what I mean?
They'd been swimming in the pool with the pods.
I'd be showing this on every brochure going, the guy who's yelling white power, he's 81. Look at him. Ready to scrap, ready to throw down, ready to defend his flag, ready to choke anyone from any ethnicity other than his own. That guy's spry and ready. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the drinking water. I don't know. And the guy on his feet, that guy's 73. He made that sign himself. He's also ready to throw down.
Make my money.
Yeah, that's right. You want to go somewhere else and get mothballed and ready to die? Or you want to come over here and join the fight?
The race war?
That's right.
You're super pretty for a Jew.
All right. What else?
Well, moving on, lots of Golden State Killer stuff in the news right now. He is pleading guilty. Former cop Joseph D'Angelo will cop to 13 counts of first-degree murder, I think 12 or 13 counts of rape, and dozens of uncharged crimes for taking the death penalty off the table in California. He's accused of a string of rapes and murders throughout California in the 70s and 80s. He's also admitted to a number of other crimes for which the statute of limitation has run out. He'll be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I think that's in September. And he'll have to make, as of yet, undetermined restitution to the family of his victims. And just FYI, the HBO series started on Sunday. We watched it, The All Be Gone in the Dark, which is about Michelle McNamara, Patton Oswalt's late wife, writing the book and helping to catch this guy. And it's incredibly compelling.
I was listening to a little bit of this on the news. You're avoiding the death penalty by cooperating with it, whatever. Why do we even offer that? We don't have all this information that you killed and strangled and raped all these people? We can't just kill you?
But it doesn't really matter because it's California.
I was going to say, it
really
feels
do
not
that.
like
And
the best.
I think Newsom halted the death penalty last year anyway. Like it doesn't, I don't get it.
Well,
we never do that anyway.
See, my whole thing is we don't want the wrong people to die, but this guy can go ahead and die. I don't know why he has to spend taxpayer money outliving us all in prison. At some point, he's going to pen his tell-all.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
go ahead.
Well, maybe that's where the restitution comes in. We've talked about extradition on this show before. I wonder if part of I know it's not, this would be an interesting Garrigus question, if part of the plea deal is you have extradition to another state, like say that doesn't have the death penalty.
Oh.
Because if this was Texas or Missouri, I can see him wanting to make a deal, but California, I don't get it. Manson, died of old age?
That always pissed me off because he should have been grandfathered into the grave. The guy gets the death penalty when we have the death penalty. Then a year or two later, the death penalty gets overturned, but he's already been given the death penalty. And so they do it. And then we have to listen to Geraldo interview him another 128 times. And everybody, we're losing a little bit of track here in this new world order of the victims, like the real victims, you know what I mean? Like the mom of Sharon Tate, who had to make the pilgrimage to the prison for the parole hearing over and over again. In her adult life, her daughter was, taken pregnant at, 26 or 27, whatever she was. And for the entire rest of her adult life, every few years or several years, she had to make the pilgrimage to the prison to sit in front of the guy who ordered the hit on her beautiful daughter. Yeah. What about her? Shouldn't she get a little say in this?
Mm-hmm. And that's when I think in September for sentencing, I think that's when families of victims will, they'll get to share their testimony for, however many days it takes. If you're not familiar with as the DA from, I think Sacramento put it, the Hannibal Lecter-ness of this guy's crimes and calling him a monster. This was somebody who seemed to love to torture. So just for the bit of a deep dive I've done on him. First of all, he would plant ropes and ties and things like that in the person's house beforehand, under their couch cushions, places hidden away in that person's house. So he had already been in there many times. So once he was ready to do the crime, the stuff he needed to tie them up was already in place. Patton Oswalt even says in the series that he would do things just to play with people, just to psychologically torture them. After say the rape was over and the torture was over, he would be silent for a long time in a pitch black house where the person was, and then out of nowhere shake the bed and re-traumatize the person that didn't know they were still there.
What a prankster.
He would put plates. He would say, tell the wife to tie up the husband. And then he would put plates on the husband's back and take the wife into the other room to rape her or torture her and say, if I hear the plates move, I will kill her. So just an absolute definition of a monster. These are all many of the things that have come out about this guy. And he's had so many different names: the East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker, tons of names. And I believe, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong, I think Michelle McNamara either coined the phrase or made popular the phrase Golden State Killer, because you don't really think about this, but branding re-energizes people. Branding makes people curious. And, we have a Golden State Killer. Well, now we got to catch this guy, as opposed to, I don't know, he had a bunch of nicknames and now he disappeared.
She coined it. She coined the phrase.
So really re-energized looking for this guy.
Can we kill this guy already?
It would be nice.
Jesus Christ.
So, so that's all in the news right now, and we'll have to wait for September.
Hey, and all you fucking pussies and douchebags out there are like, hey, if we kill him, that makes us as bad as him. Fuck you. We're nowhere near as bad as him. No one will ever be that bad. Thank you very much. I love this. Like, you're as bad as him? Yeah, okay, idiots. Fuck you. Kill this guy. Go ahead.
Well, We didn't get to this in the last few days, so we might as well because it's a local story. In the latest move to change places with names that we're not super into, leaders of Orange County, which is the county below ours, Los Angeles County, and then there's Orange County. Their Democratic Party has pushed to drop actor John Wayne's name from the county's airport. It's called John Wayne Airport.
Good luck.
Because of comments he made in a Playboy magazine article in 1971. The LA Times reported that earlier this week, officials passed an emergency resolution condemning Wayne's racist and bigoted statements and are calling on the Orange County Board of Supervisors to just change it back to Orange County Airport.
Look, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on new placards. Could we just go with Wayne Brady? We could just whack off the John part, put the Brady, go get a Tom Brady statue from New England and...
Yeah.
He's beloved.
Yeah.
No, there's no controversy there. People like the man.
Talented.
It's fine. I think we can all agree on, hey, where are you flying into, Wayne Brady?
Oh,
good. I'll pick you up. Oh, you want to Uber over?
Trip.
Yeah. See how well that works? Yeah, you know what? We're not going to LAX. We're flying out of Wayne Brady.
Smart.
Shrewd,
less
right?
crowded. Yeah, cheaper.
a little farther away, but worth it.
Well, I just went online and Jet Suite X, they say they're opening up a hub in Wayne Brady.
Oh, it's about time.
Huzzah.
It's a little annoying, but it's worth it.
Yeah, they don't have any Jamba Juices anymore in L.A., but they still have that one out in Wayne Brady.
Oh.
I got to go all that way for my Jamba? No, I guess it's
just when you're Jet Suite Next out to McCarran.
That's right.
Take a drive.
See, isn't that pleasant?
That is very pleasant.
You modify the statue a little bit, but don't have to get into too much.
Does he like cowboy hats? We could leave it.
Leave the cowboy hat, get a microphone in there.
Certainly. Yeah, I certainly worn a cowboy hat on Whose Line Is It Anyway at some point.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Well, if you're curious about what the comments are that are causing people to want to change the airport, I pulled a few. There was a lot, but I pulled a few. He's in talking about Black people. One comment was, and I quote from John Wayne, "I believe in white supremacy until the Blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I believe the actors. Said, I'm sorry. I don't
get that.
Please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people."
Wayne Brady would never say that. He's Black himself. You see how easy that was?
Maybe they have a point.
The actor said,
I think the Duke. I'm now starting to think the Duke was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I don't. Do you think that's noontime talk? Like the sober noontime talk for the Duke? I feel like he was smoking and drinking. I mean, that's not what
he was smoking.
He's probably thinking that at the same time. But I'm starting to think. I think that guy just had a buzz on. You ever hear that USC discussion with him?
Well, he played football there under his given name, Marion Morrison.
Oh, you guys, Brian, you must have heard the USC commencement speech or addressing the whatever tape.
I don't know that I have.
Oh, well, as a Trojan, I thought there's a famous.
He's very celebrated, for being they fucking worship him in Orange County, man. This will never happen. It's unlikely to happen.
There is, but also the people that worship him are all dying. They're all in golf carts chanting white pride. Hey, Max Bada, there's a famous tape of John Wayne drunk talking to USC students at a graduation or some sort of event. He's clearly loaded. And he's going off script, man.
Oh, boy.
And it's a pretty famous, it's old, and I didn't expect Gina, maybe Brian, because he went to SC. But we'll buy you a little time, Max Rabbit. But there's not that, it must be on the internet, because I've heard it before.
I'm seeing, I just want to scrub through it for a second.
Well, I'll finish up the story, and it'll be ready by then. He also said he felt no remorse in the subjugation of Native Americans, saying, "I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from them. Our so-called stealing of this country from them was just a matter of survival. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves."
Well,
I'd like to revise my prediction.
To be fair, when you make your bones as a character who just shoots Indians times 26 films, you got to stay consistent. You know what I mean? At least he's staying on point. All right, we'll see if we can find that. I'll tell you.
He had some.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know how long it
'Cause there's
is,
more.
Max.
It's like it's over 5 minutes.
There's probably a little best of. Who's he talking to? He's at USC,
It's
right?
an ROTC speech. I'm trying to figure out what.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, Meguiar's car waxes have come a long way. Last year, Meguiar's introduced the hybrid ceramic spray wax. The stuff is so good. Advanced SiO2 hybrid technology delivers ceramic wax protection and durability. No rubbing, curing, or buffing. Provides extreme water beating action. That's how you know it's working. And this year's Meguiar's launched their liquid version as well. Seals the paint for long-lasting protection against the elements. Easy to use. Apply it like traditional liquid wax. Also, hybrid ceramic spray detailer. I love me some spray detailer, especially from Meguiar's. Removes contaminants like dust, fingerprints, bird droppings, boosts gloss, and enhances protection. You want to save some water? Just hit it with some of that Meguiar's spray detailer. It's so much faster. Ceramic made easy. That is the great Meguiar's. All right, you got that?
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's UCLA.
Oh, damn it. Sorry,
That's
Brian.
why Brian.
That's why. Isn't my mom? Fuck those guys.
I had him as an SC guy, so when he was speaking to a college, I, of course, just made him at SC instead of UCLA. So he's speaking at UCLA.
Yeah, it's a commencement address at UCLA where he is completely drunk.
All right, we'll play you that.
My name is William Wayne. I don't know. This is so unimportant. I want to add anything that I can add to what he said about the fact that you guys are just on the American side. Geez, I don't know how. You know, it's so terrible that you don't know how to. There is no way to be a leader in Americana except you guys. You got to control it. We haven't any chance. You naturally things happen like at the Columbia University and at the other mother colleges.
How shit-faced is he?
No, it's when I went to school at the University of Southern California.
Applause.
Let me explain something to you. When I went there when there was a fella in control of the college. I mean, he was the boss man there.
You think Wayne Brady would ever carry on this way?
Never. Only
And a
as an
skit,
impression.
maybe. Yeah.
You can find out a little. Oh, we got a clip. We got a John Wayne clip of me.
Yeah, you brought this
What?
up in your latest book. I'm your emotional
Oh, I
support
did?
animal.
Oh.
You know, Max Patty, you can scrub through that. There's some pretty weird stuff he says in that. Sorry, go ahead. Last year, someone dug up and posted on Twitter a 1971 Playboy interview with John Wayne. Are you sitting down? He said some racist, homophobic shit. Yes, in 1971, the Duke used the word faggot and said we should have taken the land from the Indians. Can you believe it? The star of Stagecoach and Fort Apache? My world is upside down. It's nuts that we're now living in a time when dead celebrities still need a PR team. Some post-mortem publicist is going to need to get the estate of John Wayne to okay a CGI avatar with Rich Little doing the voice to go on The View and say, "Howdy, Pilgrim. I like pilgrims of all races and sexual and gender orientations. And I sincerely apologize for my hurtful words in 1971. Wow. A lot of
Look
shit
at
was in
you.
my
Timely.
book. Yeah, I had Uncle Ben's and Aunt Jemima, and now this. All right.
So,
Thanks, Dawson. Sorry.
I said real quick, a writer named Richard Jensen wrote a biography of John Wayne about 10 years ago, claimed he was a severe alcoholic. That was controversial, but the person who defended him was the editor of a John Wayne fan club online, and his defense, which it's a little tedious or a little specious, is no one will deny that John Wayne drank, and often to excess. But drinking alcohol does not make one an alcoholic. In fact, there are numerous accounts of John Wayne being able to consume prodigious amounts of alcohol with little to no effect.
That's alcoholism.
That's pretty
tolerance.
Yeah, just replace alcoholic with rapist and do the exact same thing.
No one will deny that John Wayne raped plenty of people.
Wow.
Often to excess.
I never want that guy defending me in court. Wow.
Well, the family, Ethan Wayne, the son, and others say that his words were taken out of context, and that his father took everyone at face value. And
I feel
so
like
they are
there's a
not happy about
context. He was interviewed and asked questions.
I'd go more with the shit-faced argument that I'm putting forward. You have a little more John Wayne?
Sure.
All right.
Would have kicked the goddamn hell out of this organization. I can't understand how it can happen in the United States of America that this can happen, and there aren't enough guys of your age to go up. I don't give a shit if you go to the school or not. You can't stand to have this happen. Oh Christ! I'm not trying to talk for clapping. I'm trying to talk for you guys. You better start thinking. It's getting to be goddamn ridiculous.
All right, he's talking to ROTC guys, right? So he's like saying you guys need to lead this country. I thought everyone had heard that.
No.
Well,
that is something. Talk about unearthed.
Yeah, and I think my assumption that he was drunk a lot of the time maybe. There may be something there.
Maybe onto something.
All right, Gina, let's bring her home.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
That was the news with Gina Grad.
Going to do a one-on-one with D.L. Hughley, theoretically, and we'll talk to him in a second. First, I'll tell you about Geico. Right now, Geico's offering an extra 15% credit on car and motorcycle and RV policies. That's 15% on top of the money you'd already be saving if you went to Geico, or you are saving at Geico. So you get the break, and then you get 15% on top of that. So what are you waiting for? Let's go save some money. Do it today. Never been a better time to switch to Geico. Save an extra 15% when you switch by October 7th. Visit geico.com to learn more at geico.com. All right. Gina Bald, great work. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with D.L. Hughley next. D.L. Hughley is our guest. The book, Surrender White People, Our Unconditional Terms for Peace. It's available now on Amazon and wherever you get fine books. And I just checked in the political humor category of Amazon, the first 5 or 6 spots are all your book and my book. So we just whacked up the first 5 or 6 spots up there. So congratulations, D.L. Hughley.
Likewise to you, too. Likewise.
How you feeling? We just put it up on the screen for you.
I feel a lot better. I guess today is my last day of quarantine. So I feel a lot better. I actually thought I had it in January of this year, which is why I wasn't so concerned when I went to play those gigs in Texas. But apparently I was wrong. And so apparently I was wrong. And so, everybody's doing good. My son is just about done, and I'm just about done. So it was an interesting experience.
So I never really got the full story. I know dehydration, exhaustion was one of the things we were talking about, but was that from COVID, or do we know how big a role that played? Well,
I went to infectious diseases doctors from Tennessee to Los Angeles, and apparently it's not a known symptom, but if you're dehydrated, it can be a drain on any virus can be a drain on your system. And so I was burning the candles at both ends. I had just come from performing previously in Dallas, and then I come back and do my radio show and my TV show, and then so I was a little tired, and then I'd done 2 shows previously, and then the next night for the second show because I had like 12 shows scheduled that week. So the next night I just went on stage, and one of the things they tested me for after they confirmed that I was dehydrated and exhausted, they tested me for a battery test, but they tested me for COVID, and I came back positive.
So sorry. So you knew you were gonna not make it through that show.
I knew it. And then, I tried anyway. And then, it was so funny because actually wasn't funny, but I ended up in the hospital. And when I woke up, they were running all these tests, and they came back and they told me I was exhausted. And they asked me, could they run some more? I think a CAT scan to see if I had a blood clot. They was checking me to see if I had a stroke. It was all kind of stuff. And then they said, we want to test you for COVID. And I said, of course. And originally they weren't going to give me my results for 5 days. And I was like, what the hell is that? I need to know, everything that's going on now. Cause I'm not, I want to go back to work basically. So they gave me the rapid test, and it was confirmed in a couple of hours. And, that was, then they told me to quarantine and gave me the procedure and ran some more tests for the rest of the stuff. And then I stayed in there for a day and I was home.
We'll jump into the book in a second. I do want to say that for a lot of years, I talked to a guy named Mike August, who I've traveled the world with, literally. And he's always said, he would say, D.L. Hughley. And I said, it's D.L. Hughley. And he'd say, no, it's Hughley. That's how it used to be. And I'd say, I don't know, Mike. And so we'd always argue about that. And then he'd say he knew you way back when you worked for the LA Times and you were playing comedy act theater in South Central
it was in Regency Rest. It was in Leimert Park, but he was actually with Triad and Bill Gross and all those cats there. So yeah, he was my very first agent.
Now, was it Hughley back in the day?
It's always been Hughley, but that was the argument. Every time I'd go out on an audition or every time I would book something, it was always Hughley or Hughley, but it has always been Hughley. I don't know, Mike,
he does that all the time. So
that's the Germans that used to own us centuries ago. So I don't know, but it's Hughley.
He was like, so DL worked for the LA Times. He was like a successful guy with the LA Times, like a kind of up and coming young star on the LA Times. And he lived way out, and he'd have to commute in to do this club. Hey, Chris, you put all the information on my screen and now it's gone for the club. Why would you do that? But anyway, and he's saying Sinbad would be there, Mike Epps would be there, Martin Lawrence would be there, Chris Tucker would be there. He would say Robert Townsend. He would say Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx, although he wasn't Jamie Foxx back then. He was Jamie.
He had a different name back then, but they all started there. Matter of fact, they booked Living Color there. Whoopi Goldberg had her HBO special there. We met Martin Lawrence started there. The Wayans boys started there. It was on a Thursday. Robin Harris, of course, hosted. It was before the riots. It was the place to be, and after that, of course, nobody would come down anymore. He
said that like Magic Johnson would be in the crowd, like all these huge celebrities would be, and I was like, I don't know. Eric Bishop is Jamie Foxx's real name, so he's telling me D.L. Hughley, although it's Hughley, D.L. would lived way out of town. He'd go do his thing for the Los Angeles Times, and then he'd drive all the way across town at night to play the club.
Right.
And he said you were more focused on comedy. It's probably why you collapsed on stage the other week. But he said that was a huge expenditure of energy. But let's talk about that time in that club.
I passed out on stage at the Comedy Act Theater 25 years ago, and Jamie Foxx and all them took me to the hospital then.
Oh, really?
At the Comedy Act Theater, I passed out. And I left the LA Times because I was so exhausted. I wasn't getting at that time I didn't know what it was, but it was REM sleep. So they took me off work and I was on long-term disability, and I never went back after that. But I passed out on stage then, like almost almost 30 years ago at the Comedy Act Theater, and Jamie Foxx and all them cats took me to the hospital. So I just actually remembered that. So and it was exhaustion then, and I was like a kid.
Well, let's talk about that period, because as I was talking to Mike about it, and we've talked about it throughout the years, I thought all those huge names starting off in this one club, it doesn't really exist anymore. Also, I think you worked for the Los Angeles Times about the time Shelby Coffey was the editor-in-chief. I was friends with Shelby. I was his boxing coach.
Yeah.
So I used to train Shelby.
I knew Shelby Coffey. Yeah.
So
I did.
How do you get to the Times? What's your job at the Times, and then how do you transition into stand-up?
At first, I started off, I was one of the annoying people that would call you on the phone and try to sell you the newspaper. And then I moved, and it's actually where I met my wife, at the LA Times. So I started out selling newspapers. And then I moved up to detail clerk, and I got married at the LA Times, and I needed some more money. So I moved to detail clerk, and then I moved up to assistant manager, and then I moved up to manager, and then I moved up. I was the youngest and the first Black sales manager ever. So I was in charge of what was called the Gold Coast. But how I got the job is that I had never gone to college. So I paid this cat a couple $100 from Long Beach State to write a letter and pretend like I'd gone there. And the cat named Ron Wolf, who was in charge, knew it was bullshit, but he gave me the gig anyway. And he was like, he was integral. So like I would do that. I lived in Kern County, a place called Rosamond. I would drive to Ventura. Then I would drive back from Ventura to Los Angeles to perform at the Comedy Act Theater, and all the way back again. So I was getting basically no sleep at all. And in 1 year, I put 85,000 miles on a company car I had. And that, when I passed out, it's so funny, full circle. I passed out doing that. I was so exhausted. I'd gone to UCLA Medical Center there, and I passed out, and they said I wasn't getting my REM sleep, and they put me on disability, and I ended up never going back as a result of passing out. And that guy, Ron Wolf, kept my benefits alive for a year and gave me a discretionary bonus, and I just started working the road and never really went back.
Wow. And you really want to go full circle, that first job you had at the Times, calling people and selling them subscriptions to the Los Angeles Times. My wife's mom did that for a living. So she used to just call people all day, and offer them a subscription. So let me just work this triangle out, because I've been trying to think about this for a while. And then also, you had a family at that time, right? I mean, you still do, but what I mean is your wife, you had wife and kids out there, right?
Right.
And
same ones.
Sorry, say it again. Same ones.
I got ones. They won't leave.
So you are going out. Give us the day's schedule, because I'm interested in this, and that young people who are listening who want to know how to get ahead. I tell people all the time when they go, I don't have time to do this, or I got a full-time job, or I got kids. It's like, hey, you better find time. You better make time.
Right.
So
I would start, because if you know where Kern County is, which is it was a place called Rosamond. So I had to drive there to Ventura County, which was an hour and 45-minute ride. And that was talking about without traffic. Then from there, so I had to leave at about, I left about 7 in the morning, went there, worked till 7 at night. From Ventura to Los Angeles, it was an hour and 10 minutes. So I would leave there in the clothes that I wore to work, go to the Comedy Act Theater, play there, and then go back to Rosamond to be with my wife and kids to start all over again. So I was getting literally 2 or 3 hours sleep for a year. And which is why I was exhausted too. I remember one point my wife thought I was kidding, so she went on the run with me. She got up and went to work with me, and we had a babysitter, and then she went to the Comedy Act Theater with me. She came up, and on the way home, she started crying because she couldn't believe I'd gone through it. I used to be so sleepy. I used to fall asleep. I used to go, I would drive about 45 minutes. There was a Denny's on the 14 freeway, and with a Denny's and an In-N-Out burger, and it was well lit. So I would fall asleep there for 30, 40 minutes so I could make it the rest of the way home. And I did that every day for a year and a half.
The club that we're talking about, which is the Comedy Act Theater, Where was that exactly?
It was in Leimert. So it's 43rd and Crenshaw.
43rd and Crenshaw, and that was. So it was going off there, like its prime years were early 90s, 91, 92?
The late 80s, early 90s. And then right up until the Rodney King riot, it was all the rage. Like everybody went there. It was like our Cotton Club. Everybody. You would see the biggest actors in the world go there. And because it was such a comedy hotspot, that's why Mike August and Bill Gross came down there, and that's where they signed everybody. Like Robert Townsend, Sinbad, everybody, the Wayans boys, Eddie Murphy used to come through all the time. Eddie Murphy, and when he was at his height, Robin Harris started roasting Eddie Murphy so bad Eddie left. Like Robin Harris, like it was the ultimate, and everybody you know and love now, all the black acts you know and love now, who later on become superstars. I remember Dave Chappelle would come in, he was like a kid. So it was just where we started out, and then it pretty much went away. Like after the Rodney King verdicts and the riots and all that area burned down, then of course, the agents and the industry went away from there.
The riots were in 93, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
the early 90s.
You're there in 92 or a little bit before then,
right.
And
about 89.
And so, where did you get your motor? Where did it get instilled in you, or was it always just sort of in you?
I'd always worked hard. Like I never graduated from college, and I knew I wasn't gonna. I never graduated from high school, so I knew I had. And my wife was like, "Hey, I got married. I was a kid, and I got married, and we started having kids right away. And she would stay home with the kids, so I had to hustle to make it happen. So that was never a thing to me. That was never. That was what I'd always done, but. I've actually never played the Comedy Store, never. And I remember the first time I ever got booked, I used to play the Comedy Act Theater, and I would play the Birdland West. And I never played the first time I ever played a mainstream comedy club was the Improv in Cleveland. And it was right after the big Def Jam thing. And it was a door deal. They would say, we'll give you 90% of the door. And they charged everybody $30. And I remember making so much money. But they used to, they looked at us as Def Jam act, so we weren't mainstream. So it was the first time, and that had to be 95 or 90, where I'd ever played any room other than an urban room. And then, of course, after that, between that, there was Def Jam, and then I did the BET Comic View, and then got the show and Kings of Comedy and all that kind of stuff came subsequently, but. The Comedy Act Theater was where it all started.
Yeah, I know what it's like when you grow up poor, and I grew up in Los Angeles. I know you grew up in Los Angeles and poor, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, we'll give you 90% of the door. And then they go, we sold out the first show. You want to add a second show on Thursday? And you go, yeah, man, do it. Because you're used to getting $8 an hour. And then they sold out the second. You want to add a third? And you go ahead, man. Like, just keep adding it on.
Right. That's what, and that actually what happened in Tennessee, Nashville, Brian Dorfman, Zanies, all the clubs had been closed forever. So I was in a rush to get back. We had 12 shows booked, and they were all sold out. Because that's just the gig. That's what I up until, this is the longest I've never been on stage. I've been on stage every week for decades. Well, if I for 3 or 4 weeks a year, it would be amazing. So everybody who knows me, it's just always the way I've been. Even when I had the series, we were doing Kings of Comedy, whether I'm doing a movie, whether I'm doing a radio show, no matter what, even with the TV show that we're doing now, I still get on the road every weekend.
Well, let's talk about that, because I talked to a few comedians about it. I think I was talking to Brian Callen about it. And I said, I went out to the... Huh?
I said, Brian.
Brian. I said, I did his podcast, and I said, I went out to the Houston Improv. I'd been off for 3-4 months. I thought there was going to be a lot of ring rust, and I kind of got right back up where I left off. It didn't... diminish that much. I was kind of surprised because everyone's always like, you got to work out every night, otherwise it falls off quick. But how did you feel getting back on stage?
I actually felt Dallas. I did like 10 shows, so I wasn't rusty, but I was I was tired. Like, because doing 3 shows a night every night for 3 or 4 nights in a row is, it was tiring. But it felt, I could never imagine a time like this, and I don't know that anybody's ever seen a time like this, where what you love to do has just been taken away from you like that overnight. Like it just, I went, and not just me, obviously, and I'm not, sure people have it a lot worse than that, but you went from having your calendar book for the next year and a half to, the way that you lived and your way of life, and all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore. And that there is no way of that level of getting back to that level of normalcy. That I don't know that we'll ever get back there, but that's a very sobering thought. So I was taking all that in, but I was as sharp comedically as I was because there was so much to talk about, but I was very tired.
Do you have something? We're about the same age, and the more I go through life, the more I start thinking about, well, what do I want to do? Like I've written a few books, I made a few documentaries, and that kind of stuff.
Your last was very dope. It was the one on what was it, the Netflix one you just did,
Uppity?
And I was shocked. Yeah, and I had him on my TV show. The race. I had him on my TV.
You had Willie T.
Willie T on my TV show.
Willie T. Ribs, yeah.
Matter of fact, the day before I flew to Nashville, I had him on my TV show. I'd done an interview with him, and I had watched your documentary, and then I'd done the interview, and then all the whole Bubba Watson thing. It was like a weird kind of synergistic thing, and how they kind of just mirrored those experiences, 30, 40 years ago, are still kind of what's happening now in that realm.
Yeah, Willie, I love Willie T. He's a great character. And he's a great character. And he, we found him. I was doing a doc on Paul Newman's racing history and found the Willie T story in the middle of the Paul Newman documentary. And so when we were finishing the Paul Newman doc, I said the next doc we have to do is Willie, who I was aware of, but I didn't know that much about him. So we took a deep dive into Willie T. And hopefully that is going to move to Showtime in a episodic television series.
It was a very well done documentary, and it was funny because you're a comic, so I didn't see that coming. Like I was like, okay, well, it was just I remember that whole thing, and I remember finding out that you did it. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well, that's the whole thing. In a way, we have a lot in common because we write books, we do commentary, we also do jokes and stand-up, TV shows, radio. You're kind of a Swiss Army knife of entertainment, and I'm sort of a Swiss Army knife of entertainment. But and you make some features and that kind of stuff. Well, so what about you? What would you like to do that you're not doing or next?
Well, it was funny. I'd written a book previous to this one called How Not to Get Shot, and we'd optioned it, and we were going to start making it. It was a 5-part series. And so, of course, COVID hit, and now hopefully we'll get back to that, because we were actually supposed to start shooting in March when, of course, production and stuff closed down. But I love doing the radio show. I love doing my TV talk show. I love writing books. I'm writing a new book now called Predisposed, which is all about the ways, like every time something happens to Black people in general, it's always kind of their fault. Like I remember the Surgeon General was talking about how we died disproportionately, but blamed, it on the fact that we were predisposed to, diabetes and heart disease and all that kind of stuff. So I've always taken things that I was interested in and tried to either flush them out comedically but I really like writing books a lot more than I thought I would. It's four books later, I guess I found out that I really enjoy it, and that it's like, to me, it's all the same thing. Like whether it's writing jokes or doing a movie or doing the radio show, it's like water comes into your house, same source, different users. Some you take a shower with, or wash clothes with, or you cook with, but it really is the same wellspring. It's the same source. So that's kind of how I kind of approach it. It's like because the wellspring is my perspective. And so whatever that applies to, it's just kind of what I'm in. I want to do now the things that I'm very interested in doing, and that's what I get to do. So I'm very blessed that way.
Yeah, there's a saying, I don't know what it is, Chris, if you can find it or not, but there's a saying that sort of goes, I'm going to paraphrase, if you want to know what you're thinking or how you think or whatever, write. Like if you write, that's how you'll know. It's kind of hard when you're on stage, you're trying to make the audience laugh or you got a mic in your mouth and you're interviewing somebody or something like that. But if you really just want to know where you're at and how your brain works and what you're thinking about, then you write, and whatever's on that paper, sort of where you're at. It's
pretty true. And, and it's in many forms. Like I write a lot on Twitter. I like the reason I like social media, period, is because the expediency of it. It's like you get to have these, before to say something stupid, you had to wait, but now you can do it at 2:00 in the morning. But I like having a thought and putting it out in the zeitgeist. I like having and I love reading more than I ever thought I would. Oh, I guess I am old now, but I love reading more than I would. I love reading different perspectives. I like one of the great things that happened during this whole COVID thing is that I watched more documentaries and read more books than I ever would have or ever believed would be interesting. And like I watched The Tiger King and I learned a lot. Like I would have never watched it, but I learned that if you pet a tiger long enough, pretty soon you're gonna fuck a dude. I know that. And you'll but all these things that I never would have had time or never would have believed I was interested in, I found so interesting. Like even watching your interview and watching various documentaries on different artists and different art forms and just where people's minds are, and reading things I never thought that I would. It really, if I started writing more, it wouldn't be the worst thing.
Well, it sounds like I was just talking to someone about this the other day, which is there's so many people. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you tell me. I feel like, oh my God, there's so much out there. I want to consume it. I want to put it out there. I want to know about everything. I want to taste every meal. I want to write on every subject. I want to travel to every country. I want to lay down with every woman. So you
hang on. In there.
Hang on. Your wife's in there. So my thing is like, and then other people they want to binge watch their favorite TV show and have a Pop-Tart and go to bed. Do you feel like, I feel like as you're getting older, you're realizing, time is limited. There's so much I want to do and there's nothing that can stop me from doing it. Is that a fair statement?
You know what? My daughter is married. My wife, my kids are happy. My son is in a relationship. My homes are paid off. I got a gig I love. My wife and I, are in love, and it's funny and cool. But I spent a very long time doing things. Now, I've always loved what I've done, but to be honest, it was connected. There was a goal. I had to work to take care of a family, and so a lot of the things that I did, I don't know whether I talked myself into, the idea that I liked them, or if it was just organic. But now, I only want to do things I want to do. Like, I don't want to go places. Like, I only want to do the things that I'm very interested in. I want to have the conversations, to your point, that I'm interested in. I want to read the things that I'm interested in. And it's such a varied palette now. There are things that like I said earlier, I would have never thought would be interesting to me. There are things that I eat now that I never would have thought would have been interesting to me. Like, I just, and I think, I think the world probably, because you got to remember, the world was on lockdown at the same time. And I think either people went one way or the other. Either they went in or they went out. And I think if you have gone in that experience, if you've been in that experience and it was a very shared experience and you don't come out different, I think it was a waste.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel that if you are devastated because somebody breaks up with you, or you get fired from a job you love, or even if sometimes, God forbid, you get in a horrible car accident, it all sounds really negative, but you should be able to find something in that, some growth, some learning, some perspective that changed when you learned how to appreciate something that you didn't learn how to, you formerly didn't appreciate. And so it's sort of like I used to say at the beginning of this, you can do the time or the time can do you. So you do the time. Don't let the time do you, You can get
it. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's like if you can go to prison for 6 months and come out with a great book or a tattoo on your forehead and a venereal disease. You know what I mean?
Or something. They can be both.
Or both, yeah. The quote was, if you want to know what you look like, look into a mirror. If you want to know how you think, you should write. And that was the quote I was trying to think of from a man named Dennis Prager. So let's talk about the current political climate, the situation, race relations, all that. What are your thoughts on what's going on right now? And
I think it's very precarious. I think that I would say it would be fair to say that there hasn't been this level of social upheaval and even awareness since the 60s. And I think this is our approximation of it. And I think, and I talked about this earlier, but I think that there were a lot of reasons for this. I think that the fact that the country by and large was devoid of distractions and couldn't, there was so that we had the nation's rapt attention. And then there was sequentially these things that people just couldn't turn away from and were forced to see. And it really was the mirror that you talked about earlier. And I think that a lot of people saw things in themselves and in this country that made them uncomfortable and spurred them to action. And I think just, we were talking about NASCAR earlier, and the fact that NASCAR openly says Black Lives Matter. It's like we were on lockdown so long. When we came out, Black Lives started to matter. And I don't I'm sure that is very fragile and very precarious and very tenuous. But I am very optimistic that people are starting to see and do things in ways they previously wouldn't have been open to. And so that gives me hope. But I think in America, there's always this dichotomy. Like you'll have people who are, rightfully appalled by what they saw happen to George Floyd and want justice and that officer to be punished. But some of those same people will fight for monuments and statues of men who did far worse to Black people.
Yeah, well, my feeling is I could do it sort of case by case. Like, show me a monument, show me what side of the Civil War he was on, show me what his history was, and we could do it. We could do it case by case. That doesn't mean all of them or none of them. How do you feel about policing or strategies toward policing or defund or any of those subjects?
You're right. I agree with something you said earlier about case by case. But the problem is about the statues and what they mean. It isn't. Most of these statues are men who were traitors to the country and were brutal to Black people. They got statues just for that.
Right.
They didn't know. You can't, we should name military bases after dudes who lost.
Right. I agree. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
There is a statue right now in New York of a man who's called the father of modern gynecology. And he performed gynecological surgeries on enslaved Black women with no anesthesia. Why does he need a statue? Why is there statues to people that just started the Klan? Like, America has a lot of statues of men whose only claim to fame is they were brutal to Black people. That's what they did. And the last dude who got a statue who wasn't brutal to Black people was Apollo Creed, and he beat this was Rocky, and he but I don't think that willy-nilly you should tear people down, but tear statues down. But I think if your history is connected to such wanton brutality. That says more about you, why you want to keep that. Says more about what you believe we have to do to move forward than it does about me. And in terms of policing, I think when I hear defund the police, I think that it is, it's much like how America spends so much money on our military prowess and not on anything else. And I don't think that we need to spend so much money being the biggest, baddest motherfuckers on earth. And because when that is what you do, then sooner or later you want to find a reason to use those weapons that you have invested in. And I think policemen are the same way. I don't think that policemen need to be called out for homeless people or people with mental problems. I think that we put a lot on them that they are not necessarily equipped to handle. They can't be society's dirty clothes hamper. But also, I think that they shouldn't be able to have qualified immunity. I don't think that anybody should. I think that, Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, had 18 complaints against him. 18. The only profession where you can have 18 complaints by the public and still keep your job are priests and policemen.
Yeah, if you're driving for Uber, you're out.
That's really it. And so why do you get a special dispensation? Matter of fact, your calling, because your calling is so, you have a higher calling. It should be a higher standard, not a lower one. You should have people to answer to. And I think qualified immunity gives people the idea that they're untouchable, that they're above the law. And those people tend to be the ones who are in our communities. And we see these things play out over and over again. And I think that there's the idea of policing in America needs to change, because what they're doing now is what they always have done, which is to keep Black people in places where they don't, out of places where they don't belong and where they do.
Sorry, you think about, you're politically oriented, obviously. You must have been approached to run for office or discussed it. Had to have come up before.
That doesn't interest me at all. But I will say this: I'm very interested in how we navigate this arena that we're in, because the thing that I find the most disturbing, I think the way that Derek Chauvin stood on that man's neck, knowing that he was killing him, and that there was no sense of urgency, there was no anger, there was no. Sociopaths do that.
Oh yeah.
Where and the fact that he knew nothing would happen, and that he was committing murder in front of everybody, and he knew nothing would happen, says a lot about this nation, and that happens often. That happens often.
I have a few thoughts. I don't think it's as often. Well, what I should say is a lot of white people get killed by cops as well. It's not really reported on as much, but doesn't mean there's not killer cops out there. It just means they're doing way too much killing of white and Black and brown. My theory with that cop runs a little bit deeper, which is he had people around him, Black people, I'm assuming, saying, get off the guy. And he stayed on every time they said, you're killing him. He can't breathe. Get the fuck off him. He went, you're going to tell me what to do? I'm staying here. Like, I felt like he was going against the crowd. I feel like he's trying to murder him. You feel but you think if they were alone and nobody was around filming or anything, think he would have done the exact same behavior?
I think the fact that he wasn't alone and the fact that he knew he was being taped leads credence to the idea that he knew what he was doing. And he had 18 incidences of violence. He shot a kid earlier. This is who he is, and this is who this society protects. And those men are the type of men who are rife in our communities. Yes, white men get shot more than Black men do, Black and brown men, by the police. But they also shoot more policemen. They shoot away many more policemen than Black or brown people do. And where that dichotomy changes, where that dynamic changes, there are many more unarmed Black men and brown men who get killed by the police than white men.
Well,
many.
Well, now statistically, I heard 10 last year.
10 what?
10 unarmed black men shot by cops in, I don't know, 2019 or something like that.
We can probably name just off the top the kid killed in Aurora last year for the ski mask. The kid who was McLean, Botham John, who they walked into his apartment, killed him. Tatiana Jefferson, they killed her in her apartment. Breonna Taylor, they killed her on that raid just now in Louisville. We had
well, you don't have to. I mean,
but I'm saying
I know there's a lot. We don't have to figure it all out.
It's a lot more than 10, and I just think if you look at what we're going back to, the kid that got killed in Aurora, Illinois, had a ski mask on. He had what my son has. He had Asperger's syndrome. They thought he was he was being disrespectful for wearing a ski mask. He was an introvert. They basically put his, they put him in a chokehold, think he's on drugs, give him a drug to stop an overdose, and he has a heart attack and dies.
Yeah. No, look, I'm not defending cops. It's horrible.
No. And here's the thing. I think one of the things that I always am repulsed by is they have a hard job. No one could deny that. But if it's too hard that society has to suffer, don't do it. Why do you don't have to do that job?
Where do you come down on education, family, and that sort of stuff? I learned, I think there's a lot of family involved here. I feel like the black family is almost destroyed. We need to build it back up. I'm not sure what the avenue is to build the black family back up. And by the way, every family, I think we're suffering from that as a nation, certainly statistically. Take a kid from a broken family and expect them to succeed. It's so much more difficult. What can we do to remedy that?
I think that one of the things, and it was funny because I actually was having this conversation with Vice President Biden a couple of days ago. But
oh, really?
One of the things that's interesting about education is there's never been a time in America where America invested in Black and brown people's education. They gave them schools, and those schools were often inferior. They didn't build new schools and give them books or the modern equipment. You got the relics of what somebody else left behind. So this idea that we have invested in America's in Black and brown people's education is a fallacy, and where
how did the Pence conversation come about?
No, Biden, not Pence.
Oh, sorry, Biden. Sorry, I was thinking vice president. He probably broke up. Sorry, Biden.
He called to see how I was doing, and if I was on the mend, and we started talking about what he believed was important, what I believe was important. And one of the things we came to was education, and I think what's very interesting to me is this notion that we will spend more, obviously, on penalizing people than educating them. And that the notion that just because you spent a lot of money, like name me a time in our history where we were given adequate schooling, just adequate schooling. That whole separate but equal notion of this America was that we'll have these schools and you can have these schools we're not using anymore. And these resources we're not using anymore. So there was never equal footing. And I think ultimately there needs to be an opportunity for people to succeed or fail at a basic level. At a basic level where we make real investments in modern education. My children went to school when I started making money. They went to school at a school district in Los Angeles, Inglewood School District. And it was a great school. And then we moved to the Valley. And my children were so far behind when we got here, up and from the time that they got up to there when they was, 4, 5, and 6 years old, to the time they left, I had to hire tutors to catch them up. So imagine that replicating itself all over the country.
Yeah.
And I just...
where'd you go in the Valley? Where'd they go in the Valley?
the West Hills, Palmetto Elementary, and I forgot the name of the school. So I moved to West Hills, and then later on I moved to Calabasas, and they went to El Camino, and my daughter went on to Smith and USC. My children have all graduated from college, but I always had to take resources and pay for tutors just to catch them up because they had started out in a school in the inner city.
There's a story, I think, of a black radio show host, conservative, named Larry Elder. And the story goes that he went to school in Crenshaw and thought he was doing pretty good. And then at some point ended up at Fairfax High School and was immediately way behind everyone. And that shit's from the 60s, probably 60s, early 70s. Your daughter's from the 2000s and beyond. So this is a pretty old story. What do you think about family? What do we do?
I think that the notion of family, I think this idea that there's anything people could do, that seems to be more inherent. People have to either have a level of value and appreciate for it. But I think families look differently. Like there is the popular notion that black men tend to be absentee fathers, but even sociologists say that black men are as involved with their children in terms of reading to them, taking them to school, giving them baths, taking them to the doctor's appointment as any other group of parents, and more so than society would have you believe. Because they're not married to that woman doesn't mean they're not an active participant in that child's life. But the popular notion of that, the society's popular notion is that, we're all absent and we're not fathers, which isn't. A lot of that is a stigma. A lot of that is, people's personal experiences, and of course that gets exacerbated. And you concentrate more on negative than you do on positive, but the idea of family has to be inherent and important to that individual. But I think the structure has to find ways to be like the referee and stay out of the way, and to make it easier to stay a family, to make it easier, like to have a man that feels like he's accomplished in something, to have children that feel like they're learning things, to have a person feel fulfilled. There are things that we can do to make sure that you can provide an atmosphere that's conducive to families staying together, or to their motivation. But I don't know that there has to be a level of that's inherent too.
What was your family of origin like?
My father was the hardest working man I've ever met. My mother was an interesting woman, and I had two sisters and a brother, and we grew up on 135th and Avalon. And my father
is that South Central?
It is. So if you threw a rock from where I live, you'd hit somebody that lives in Compton. So it was interesting. So, but watching the things, like I remember when I grew up, you remember Proposition 13, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I grew up, we used to have buses and after school programs and free lunch programs. And when Proposition 13 happened, all that stuff was taken away. So my neighborhood had to go to Gardena High, but we had to, when the buses were taken away, we had to walk through all these neighborhoods, to go to school. And after a while, you getting your ass whooped every day and fighting every day. All the dudes who could fight dropped out. So sooner or later, you going to school with nerds and people in the band. So that shit ain't, that's not gonna work. But flash to that event was attached to, to property value. That event, if you look at that and watch what happened as a result of that, how crime spiked and violence spiked and drugs spiked, because you took the resources that people used to have and didn't, and LA turned into the Wild Wild West during that time. But it was direct.
Yeah, I went to North Hollywood High, and I think we definitely had kids bust in from Crenshaw and South Central and all that. They played all the skilled positions on the football teams, and the white guys blocked. Basically, is how it works. I mean, I played football with guys named Melvin Royal, and and all these cats from probably South Central and Crenshaw and stuff like that. And they all bust in, and I lived next door to North Hollywood High, so I just jumped the fence, go back to my house, and I used to see that bus would pick them up on Chandler Boulevard. They'd all line up at about 5 o'clock, and because after football practice, they couldn't go home after school. They had to go home after football practice. Let's see. Mario Menifee. I'm thinking of some of these names. There was, oh God, I'll come up with some more of these good black names for you. Try not to be offended, but there was.
Why would I be offended by a dude's name?
I don't know. These are very touchy times, DL. I don't want to offend. We had Wendell Shirley, who changed it to Wendell Shirley. I'm trying to think of some of the other brothers, and they would get in that bus at 5 o'clock, and I'd be like, "Shit, I'm going home," and I'll be home in 10 minutes, and they're like, "Those guys got a long ride back to wherever they came from," and then they'd also have to get in the bus at 6:30 in the morning to make it. My class was 8:05. I'd wake up at 7:45 and just jump the fence and be sitting in there. So I always took note that was kind of a long day for those guys.
Yeah. Imagine when that didn't happen anymore. Because what they did, they took resources away, and every, the drug game got bad, gangs got bad. If you took a line and drew it from that huge spike of crime, it wasn't that big a longer period of time between Proposition 13 and the riots of Rodney King. Mm-hmm. I bet you when gangs were rampant, drugs were rampant, but imagine that exacerbating itself all over the city, where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and the resources went away. And then you had 3 strikes and you're out. And then you had all these drug laws. And then but all of this was about a society that was punitive and short-sighted. And it got to a place where California couldn't afford to jail all those people anymore. So they let 20,000 people out as a result. And I guarantee you, all those people, if you look at their trajectory, it was this minimizing of resources that were in a community, and people got that, attached to their property value. And all of a sudden, LA became a city that was violent and drug-addled, and the police. We spent more on policing, and it didn't have the desired result. I guarantee you.
Oh no,
people would have done a different thing.
You said your dad was the hardest working guy you've ever met, so obviously that seemed to work on you. Did it have that effect on your brothers and your sister as well?
They work hard. They're just dumb. No, they work hard. They work hard. They just have a different outlet. They have a different idea of the world than I do. And I'd always had a specific. I remember my ideas used to always get me whoopings and kicked out of school and beat up. And so I grew up learning that there was a consequence to saying what you believed and standing on it. I knew that it resulted in generally an ass whooping. And so after a while, it became something I was kind of used to.
Did your parents stay together? Are they still alive?
Yeah. No, I just lost my old man about 3 years ago, but yeah, it'd be 3 years next 3 years. This in a couple of days, actually. But yeah, he died of lung cancer, and my mother's still alive. Yes.
And they stayed together till the end of your father's life.
If together by living in the same house.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lived in the same domicile. Yes.
I get it. What business was your dad in?
he cleaned airplanes for first Western Airlines, and then first Western, and then later on became Delta. And I remember my father got a gold watch for never being late.
Wow.
Never. He never was late, and he threw it on the dresser, and he was like, and I like very dismissive. Like he was like, "Yeah, I don't care about that watch," and it was in a case, and it was so one day. I was like, this motherfucker don't care about the watch. So I put it on one day and he saw me with it on and beat the shit out of me. And like, because he pretended like that watch wasn't a big deal, but it really was everything to him. And I learned a lot specifically about his assessment of his worth and what we would think of that. And I always, whenever, even flashed to me passing out, because I believe that a man is supposed to work till he can't work anymore. And I got that from him, and I think now it's starting to be detrimental. But that's an idea he instilled in me.
I feel the same way, though my dad didn't instill anything in me, but I found it somewhere. The book, Surrender White People, Our Unconditional Terms for Peace, and it's available now on Amazon, and you can also watch TV show D.L. Hughley Uncut. New episodes are Friday, 8 p.m. on Pluto TV, channel 428. I have a channel on Pluto TV as well, so you can watch DL and you can watch us too. Website. Sorry. Oh.
I said we got a tag.
Oh, you broke up. Sorry, DL. Say it again.
I said we have a tag team thing going.
Yeah, I'm on. I think mine is Chassis Uppity. I think, and a lot of my car docs are on
585.
585. DL is 428, and the website realdlhughley.com is where you go. Hey, DL, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, man. I had a good time. Thank you, man.
I had a good time, too, and we'll talk soon, I hope. And don't work too hard.
No, I won't. Thank you, man. Take care.
You. All right, you can go to AdamCarolla.com for all you need, and you can get my book right next to DL's book on Amazon as well. Until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Bald Brian and Gina and DL Hughley. Oh, good sports coming up next. Saying mahalo.